been thinking about the Sakya Rasa and Vatsalya Rasa and Madhurya Rasa. Now Madhurya is the highest, but somehow I can't imagine that the cowherd boys love Krishna any less than the gopis. It seems to me like if they heard him call their names on his flute, they would get up in the middle of the night and leave whoever they had to leave and go running to be with him also.
It's an important subject and question, and Prabhupada was, and the previous acharyas as well, they were quick to emphasize the fact that the realm of rasa is, we should be very careful to protect ourselves from thinking of it in a mundane way. And this is an example, if you will, of how it can be thought of in a mundane way. That one rasa is higher than another in the way that we think about that materially, that one is better than another, and this is a problem to some extent with language, but beyond that, perfect is perfect, and there are different types of perfection. There are gradations in perfection, and while there is an objective fullness of Madhurya Rasa that exceeds other rasas, each one is thought to be perfect and perceived, experienced as such by the rasika, by the devotee. And so twice in Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami labors to point out the exalted position of Madhurya Rasa, having done so, he comes back immediately and says, more or less, but each devotee in their particular rasa is full and complete. And so while there's some objectivity to the more the intimacy, the measure of intimacy, the degree of intimacy that's afforded one in Madhurya Rasa, the subjective experience of each devotee of their rasa makes them feel that their rasa is superior. And so you can find then the section of Chaitanya Charitamrita in the 6th chapter of the Adi Lila where Advaita Acharya is being described, and Dasya Bhakti, Dasya Rasa is being emphasized. And it's very beautiful because there Krishnadas is emphasizing the Dasya Rasa side of Advaita as Mahavishnu, Sadashiva. He has a unique idea there himself, Krishnadas, identifying him with one of two aspects of Mahavishnu. Won't go into the details of that, but in other places, other authors, other devotees, he's identified with Sadashiva, who is Mahavishnu in the form of a devotee in Shivaloka, devotee of Sankarshan. While that Sadashiva, from the Gaudiya perspective, and this one that they arrive at by drawing from sacred texts, which they exhibit a very comprehensive understanding of, they also find a place for Sadashiva in Krishna Loka, in the Vrajaloka, in both rasas, as a cowherd in Sakya rasa, and as a Gopishwar, stationed as he is at the gate of the Rasa Leela there. So, point being, Shiva, Sadashiva, have a desire to taste these two, and his position is unique, obviously not like ours. So he's represented in both ways there. So there's a connection to the Braj Leela in Sakyarasa, brought out by Kavi Karnapur through Advaita Acharya, and I don't think by Kavi Karnapur, perhaps by others, with Madhurya Rasa, and in an extended way, even beyond the his having the position as Gopishwar, and that you can find by being in the literature of the followers of Advaita, where there are a number of books have been penned about his glories and so on and so forth. But at any rate, that's a bit of an aside. And Krishnadas Kaviraj just kind of, he has a certain focus in his book, which is basically to teach that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Radha and Krishna combined, and that in the course of Krishna's seeking to experience himself from the perspective of Radha, to step into her shoes, to wear her countenance, and all, that the opportunity to come as close to experiencing that oneself for the jiva is also made available. This is what Chaitanya Charitamrita is about, that Radha and Krishna have come as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and it is Krishna tasting the bhava of Radha and making the bhava of Radha as accessible to a jiva that it could be. Not exactly in the same way as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but it's through the ideal of the Manjari Bhava embodied in Rupa Swami. So Chaitanya Charitamrita is Krishnadas faithfully revealing the vision of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that is found in the heart of Rupa Goswami, basically. And so that's a lot to do. And there were a lot of different ideas about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu out and around at the time and so forth. So with regard to Dvaita, he doesn't go into details, but he identifies him in a general way. He's the Prabhu, he's Vishnu, and that's over the context of talking about him like that. He talks about Dasya Rasa. So what I'm saying is it is a beautiful chapter there in which glorifying the way that Dasya Rasa is glorified, and that kind of voice is invoked, wherein from the Dasya Rasa perspective, the text sees all the other rasas as really not being as good as Dasya Rasa, or you know, they're really all about Dasya anyway. So Dasya is the best, something like that. And you can find this in writings of other great devotees steeped in the bhava of Sakya Rasa, seeing verses in Chaitanya in Bhagavatam differently than from someone from a Gopi Bhav perspective will see them. And even there's a famous verse in Gopi Venu Gita. What is that verse where the gopis are speaking about the most beautiful
Cowherd voice.
Adornment of the eyes, the perfection of the eyes is to see Krishna and Balaram, the cowherds, and the cows entering into the forest daily and so forth. And so, from the Sakirasa perspective, the devotees in that bhava will say, just even the gopis are saying, this is the best. Or Radha sees Subal walking freely arm in arm with Krishna in the public and expresses the desire. They take it like that. From the Gopi Bhav perspective, they'll see other things in the verse and translate the words or interpret the words differently. And in that verse in Gopi Gita, they'll take Ram out of the picture altogether through the grammatical explanations and so on and so forth. And so it's all very beautiful. And these kind of difference ornaments the non-dual absolute, and they're all forms of perfection, and they're all experienced as such and as the best by each devotee. So it's important, therefore, and we have been cautioned by previous acharyas and by Prabhupada repeatedly also, not to allow any kind of mundane consideration to enter into such discussions. Another example of Prabhupada, I think Krishnadas himself, giving the metaphorical tree of devotion in which Mahaprabhu is the gardener and the tree itself, and it takes the two trunks of Advaita and Nityananda and many branches. One should not think one devotee is higher or another devotee is lower. But Sri Maharaj nicely commented on this kind of thinking when he was confronted, not in a confrontational way, but when he came in touch with kind of a sense of kind of fanaticism on the part of some of Prabhupada's disciples, that he felt then the need to kind of bring into balance with Prabhupada's, for example, outgoing nature and emphasis on preaching. Then he responded, well, the thing is the devotees that are pure, they're moved the way that Krishna wants them to move, something like that. So one, Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, he had one disciple, Bhaktisiddhanta, told him not to preach, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, spawned the movement that we were all part of, and that came through Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He had to honor both, and both were perfectly pure indeed. Bhaktivinoda himself told Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Bhimo Prasad, you should take initiation from Gaurkishore. Comment?
More of an elaboration on our question when you're ready.
Okay, and so one has to be careful about that. Now, what you'll find in Rupa Goswami's explanation through the pen of Krishnadas Kaviraj, Chaitanya Charitamrita, is a nice example to help us understand the difference between the rasas. And the example is just like the elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, contain, respectively, starting at the other end, ether, sound, and air, sound and touch, and fire, sound, touch, and sight, and water, sound, touch, sight, and taste, and earth, sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. So in that example, the earth contains elements that are found in the other elements, and something that is not found in the other elements. It's not saying that earth is water, earth is fire. Some people say, well, if you have Madhurya Rasa, then you're also tasting Sakya Rasa, And so Prabhupada was in Madhurya Rasa, and therefore sometimes he tasted Sakya Rasa and hadn't read about it at that time, something like that. It's not what the analogy is saying. That's like saying having earth is like having water and having fire. And you have an aspect, you have something that is found in fire, also in earth. You have something that is found in water, also in earth, and something more. So that's an important distinction that a lot of devotees don't make or haven't maybe have thought out that well. Each of the rasas is a complete, distinct experience. And so there is something in Madhurya Rasa that's not in Vatsalya Rasa, that's not in Sakya Rasa. There's a kind of Sakya Rasa, of course, that is influenced by Madhurya Rasa. And there are compatible rasas and there are incompatible rasas. So with regard to the compatible rasas, it's possible that for a devotee to be steeped in a particular rasa and then be attracted to a compatible rasa. So Madhurya Rasa and Sakya Rasa are compatible. So it's possible for a devotee in Sakya Rasa to be attracted to Madhurya Rasa. But Madhurya Rasa is such, or let's say Sakya Rasa is such, that you can't mix it with Madhurya Rasa in the same way that you could mix it with Dasya Rasa or Vatsalya Rasa. In other words, a parent could be a friend too. Or let's say a friend could be like a parent. An older brother can also have some tinge of the bhav of Vatsalya in terms of being a well-wisher of the younger brother. And similarly, from the other side, the younger brother who has a brotherly or friendly relationship with his brother can have a tinge, would have in this case, a tinge of servitorship in his Sakya in relation to his brother, right? But with regard to Madhurya Rasa, we say, oh no, they're just friends. If a boy and a girl or a young man were going to say, you're like another couple, they really could say, no, we're just friends. We're just friends. No, that doesn't, or she writes, I just want to be your friend, let's just be friends, okay? Leave it at that. That's cool, and so it doesn't mix. Similarly, Madhurya Rasa, Vatsalya Rasa, you can't have Vatsalya Rasa and mix with Madhurya Rasa. This is an important thing also to consider when we talk about these things. As high as they are, they're very much drawing on human experience for explanation. So we can often go to the human experience to get some greater understanding and play that out, better understanding of these terms that are abstract. And you learn some Sanskrit word and you just spit it out as if you know it and so forth. And sometimes it's not very well understood. So to go to the human experience, this is what they're seeking to do by invoking the secular rasa terminology. Rupa Goswami is to explain the spiritual world and the world of Bhakti Rasa. So you can't, while you can mix Sakya Rasa with Vatsalya and Dasya, you can't mix it in the same way with Madhurya Rasa. Now, Rupa Goswami does use the word mix, mishra, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu when he's speaking about Sakya Rasa interacting with, influenced by Madhurya Rasa, but it's more mixing in terms of an influence. Jiva Goswami refers to it as a sanchari, acts like a sanchari bhav. So the desire of the cowherd for Madhurya Rasa causes the Madhurya Rasa, which is a compatible rasa, to act like a sanchari, which is a rasa that a bhava that comes and goes and augments the primary rasa. So the secondary rasa here, in this case, which is a primary rasa, Madhurya rasa, is compatible with Sakya rasa, and it has an influence, and it imbues the Sakya rasa with something that the other forms of Sakya rasa don't experience, and it's something that causes the Sakya rasa to rise in intensity and sense of intimacy with Bhagavan Shri Krishna, that such that it surpasses even that of Vatsalya rasa, which typically surpasses Sakya rasa in terms of intensity, or let's say intimacy that it affords. So it's a special case, and but it's not that the cowherd boy enters into Madhurya rasa. And of course that enables him to be sympathetic to Krishna in his romantic life, and be a counselor and advisor and so on and so forth. So that's an extreme form of the highest, expression, if you will, of Sakya rasa in terms of how we're speaking about it. That it contains something that other forms of Sakya rasa don't. Each one is complete in itself. So there is an objective reality to the position of Madhurya rasa, and within that, there are different kinds of Madhurya rasa. And so, there's Madhurya rasa in Dwarka, there's Madhurya rasa in Akuja, in Mathura, there's Madhurya rasa in the Braj. Within the Braj, there's different types of Madhurya rasa. There's Sambhoga, desire for direct union with Krishna, and Tadbhava, the desire to be identified with, attached to the bhava of one who has a direct relationship with Krishna. And then within those who have the desire to have a direct relationship, have desire to identify with and serve the bhava of one who has a direct relationship, there are different kinds of those devotees, Madhurya rasa. And the Goswamis have reasoned, but within all of this, and so the Manjari position is most exalted, and it comes closest, let us say, to experiencing Krishna, if you will, in a way that, to the extent, with the same intensity that Radha does. So that's a fact about it. But same time, to go play this out a little further, that rasa is not possible without Sakya rasa, without Vatsalya rasa, without opposing rasas. So it's a composite, the Braj, and it all works together. You can't just have the leading lady and the hero and no supporting actors and so forth, and expect to win the award. So it's all perfect, different measures of perfection, and it's arising in devotees, one bhava or another, based on their association, and this has been going on forever, that these bhavas are available, and it's through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dispensation. He is said to give the bhavas of Braj. What we see practically in his mission is that this Sakya rasa arises in this Madhurya rasa, primarily Madhurya rasa, but some waves of Sakya rasa obviously are there from the very beginning, and they seem to pop up again here and there, probably a prominent example in modern times. As I said before, the Sakya rasa of Nityananda Prabhu's associates started the whole of the Gaudiya Sampradaya in terms of worship of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and before the Goswami's books were written and so forth, and they were initiating and so on. So it's there, and the Madhurya rasa, of course, has its very prominent, important position, and those two, at least the highest form of the Sakya rasa and the Manjari bhava, they're very similar in terms of intimacy, but still the intimacy afforded the Manjari exceeds. But each is perfect and complete, and comes to us through a descending path. I mean, what can you say? Why you get association of one devotee or another? That's beyond reason. There are devotees in the world, and other than those influences, Sakya Rasa, Madhurya Rasa, for example, representing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and we have the good fortune to meet them, and we may meet from both sides and so forth. So, at any rate, it's important not to think of them in the same way, and we see that sometimes happening, and it's this fighting over, this one's better, and it's very unbecoming, and it's just time to bow out of the conversation. It's important to make the point. We published a nice book, Oh My Friend, about Prabhupada's statements about himself, just for clarity, because persons other than Prabhupada were saying things about himself who apparently weren't privy to the many things that he himself said and the way he commented on things from a Sakyabhava perspective. So we thought, let's assemble that together and and share it with the community of the Vaishnavas as a service. It was hard to remain silent when knowing those things and hearing others speak authoritatively in many respects about rasa, and for example about the position of the Manjari Bhava and so forth in the Sampradaya, and understandably identifying Prabhupada with it, as is the case for most devotees, most of the acharyas, but there happen to be extenuating circumstances, and a lot of evidence to in support of the idea that Prabhupada idealized the sentiment of Sakya Rasa. So it's unfortunate, and a person should tread very carefully there. I mean, to give an example, when Sridhar Maharaj, Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj first said that in his opinion, and based on this, and this, he gave his different evidences and so forth, including Prabhupada's letter in the Jaladuta and the establishing of the Krishna Balaram deities and many other things. The Prabhupada idealized Sakya Rasa. This was his ideal. And when he said this, some of Prabhupada's disciples who weren't at the feet of Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, hearing that from him and riding on a wave of ecstasy to hear his feeling about it and the way in which he drew the support and so forth, was very satisfying. The way in which you're supposed to support what you feel and your opinions, with references and so forth. It was very beautiful and very much a glorification of Prabhupada, and that's the spirit in which it was spoken. It wasn't forced, or it just happened to come out in the context of some discussions and so forth. And there were questions about it, and there were some other discussions and so forth. But one of the reactions from across the river in Mayapur, from devotees who weren't hearing from Sridhar Maharaj and were hearing that Sridhar Maharaj was not a good person to hear from, and who were criticizing, from those who were criticizing Sridhar Maharaj, which is a spiritual suicide. Some of them took exception and said, see, he's criticizing Prabhupada and saying that only by he's in Madhurya Rasa, Prabhupada's only in Sakya Rasa, and you have to come to Madhurya Rasa to come to him, to come to Madhurya Rasa and just see it. They made something so profane out of something so beautiful that it's just horrible, to hear that. And of course, Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj heard that, and he was completely bewildered by it. He said, I thought it was a compliment. And he said, what did they think Sakya Rasa is? Is it a bad thing? Is that what they're thinking? And I got a similar response from Puri Maharaj when I Lord Tripurari, when I told him that some of, I didn't mention who, but some disciples are making this point that that because our Guru Maharaj is in Sakya Rasa, he can't give Madhurya Rasa. And I read in the poem of Prabhupada. First I read the poem of Prabhupada, and when I got to he's listening and got to the passage, Kotavani Chutri Vani Kai Dupri Sayin Kodomemo Tomarmelane Bayaba Shishu. He's kind of sat up, and he was not, real active at that time. Quite old. He says, "Oh, Sakya Rasa." Then I made the point, and then he chuckled and said, "Baba, if you think, if someone thinks that I've got a guru and situated in Sakya Rasa and I've got a problem, then he's got a problem." He can make all arrangements, he said. The problem being, or thought, well, I've got a problem because I want to be in Madhurya Rasa. My guru doesn't have it. He can't give what he doesn't have. That's like saying, Subal can't introduce me to Lolita, or something. Lolita's like, you should go over here. I think he has that, that kind of that capacity, and plays a role like that. Even Rupa Goswami describes Subal, for example, in the night, going. Krishna walking out with the full moon, and Krishna's glorifying the night, and so forth, and how beautiful it is. And I guess it's not the full moon, maybe the dark moon, I can't recall, but he's glorifying the night. And but there's a pretext, he wants to meet Radha, and Subal senses it, and the necessity of Krishna being felt by him, he goes and finds Radha in the night and her manjari, and they're described like this because it's dark, putting one hand on Radha's putting one hand on Subal and Rupa Manjari on the shoulder, and here they go in the forest, and Subal will guide, he knows where Krishna is, something like this. So Rupa Goswami himself, in his poetry, in his Lila Grantha, in the Manjari Bhav, obviously, he says, "Oh, Subal, you are the knower, intimate knower of Radha and Krishna, the son of Nanda and the son of Prashananda. Please make arrangement for me to meet with him, something like that." So, and the point being, not that, then somebody would say, "Well, it's Sakya Rasa Sire," It's not what Rupa Goswami is really saying, but he has a feeling for what these things are, what these other rasas are, and that's what we want, appreciation for the ideal, and we need to be careful not to look at it in a mundane way, because that will not help us to attain any rasa. Comment?
Taking that the other direction entirely, to the level of Istadevs and the various, objectives of the Vaishnava lineages. And in your discussion, a thought came to mind, which I'd just like to have some clarification on. Of course, I guess you could say it in a way, we wear blinders of Gaudiya Vaishnavism coming in our Sampradaya and the exposure we have to our gurus and the literatures that come in the wake of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Are the other lineages that we don't have exposure to, other Vaishnava lineages, at this point in time, in this Kali Yuga, this special, are they also moving forward? Or has Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda's Gaudiya Vaishnavism eclipsed everything. Because you had mentioned once, well, Prabhupada established a temple for, Sita Ram. So how much of that prospect exists when the full moon and the full sun are...
Well, I think there's two sides, ways to look at Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dispensation. And you can look at that through the Mahamantra itself, which was which he named. He named the Hare Krishna mantra the Mahamantra, and over and over again spoke of it as such in Chaitanya Bhagavat, so through the pen of Namadas Thakur, and he asked his disciples to chant the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And so this mantra is an Upanishadic mantra. It's found in the Kali Santra Upanishad. It's meant for Kali Yuga. So it has a very broad outreach. Narada asked Brahma, how will people be delivered in Kali Yuga? And he said, by chanting these 16 names. Iti Sorasakam Namam Kalikalashanashanam Sarvavedeshu Rishite Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. I think in the Upanishad it said Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Just a matter of when you tuned in, really, because it keeps going around. So there's no beginning, there's no end to that. But there it's described as Taraka Brahmanam. So the name for Taraka means to deliver. The name's the mantra, the Mahamantra for deliverance in Kali Yuga. And deliverance is a broad term. Deliverance means mukti. So, and when we think here, when I speak of mukti, what's being talked about there is mukti. Well, there's 5 kinds of mukti, but there's one type of mukti that has no scope for devotion, and then there's the passive devotion and dasa sakya, and so forth. But I should just mention Vatsalya, Sakya, and Madhurya, that's special. So it's more or less talking about Vaikuntha. Chandaras, Dasaras, Taraka Brahmanam. And so it's a broad application, and therefore I've been to Trivandrum, where there's a temple in South India where the Hare Krishna mantra is chanted 24 hours a day. But when they chant the name of Ram, they're thinking of Ramchandra. So Hare Krishna, Ram, they think these are all names of God, and Narayan has many forms, and their ideal is to attain Vaikuntha, and they can attain it by that as possible. So Bhakti knows that Nam Chintamani, Chintamani is the touchstone. So the Nam fulfills the desire that comes within you by association and so forth. So there's a broad and universal side. There's you go back to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the person of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he has the Yuga Dharma side and the Braja Bhakti side, and obviously the two are interwoven together. Bhakti Vinod said that the different sampradayas will all come under the banner of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, something to that effect, because he's the Yuga avatar, and they have to recognize that in due course. From my perspective, at least at this point, what it has happened to the Sri Sampradaya, and to the Madhva Sampradaya, and to the Nivarka Sampradaya, and to the what's called the Bhadava Sampradaya, or but what's the
Rudra
Sampradaya? Suddha Sampradaya. Suddha Dvaita, and Vishishta Dvaita. That these 4 sampradayas, this is very practical. They are all getting energy from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, and particularly through the work of our Parivar, and within that, particularly through the work of when I say our Parva, I mean Bhakti Vinod Parivar, coming from Bhakti Vinod, from the who had the vision and through the practical work of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, give it some shape, and through our beloved Gurudev, Vishnu Padisi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who took it all over the world. And taking it all over the world, there was a time when there was, in the academia, there was no real understanding of practically of the different forms of Advaita. Maybe some specialists here and there, but Prabhupada, labored hard to establish that there are other perspectives on Vedanta than Advaita Vedanta. And while doing that in the context of advocating the Achinti Veda Veda of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he followed the mood of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Jiva Goswami, as you know from Tapasandarbha, acknowledging the different sampradayas. Bhaktisiddhanta established deities of Nimbarka and Vishnu Swami, Ramanuja, and Madhva at Yogapith or Chaitanya Math, or next door to another, forget which one. And it's just a fact. I mean, Prabhupada's work was extraordinary, and it spawned quite a bit of scholarship with regard to these different forms of Vedanta. And he had so much to do. They were sleeping. I mean, the Nimbarka Sampradaya still is kind of asleep. Madhva Sampradaya was really asleep. The Vishishtadvaita Ramanuja was a little more awake and known, but Prabhupada and our Sampradaya really helped to make it known. I've given the story before, the one guy who got frustrated with ISKCON and left it, became a Ramanuja, and a Western fellow, and he went to the Sri Ranganath temple to get in and had his Diksha paper that he was an initiated Hindu, and who wouldn't let him in because he was a Westerner. And that was their policy there. And then in frustration, without thinking twice, said, Hare Krishna. I said, oh, Hare Krishna, come on in. Hare Krishna? Oh, yes, come. So just a cute little, anecdote, which makes the point that I'm making, in a sense, that that movement, Prabhupada's movement in particular, did so much for Vaishnavism and all forms of Vaishnavism. And then you have Western people coming from Prabhupada's campaign, coming from the Bhakti Vinod Parivar, and going to, like, you have your, some of our godbrothers that went to Ramanuja. I know some guys went to this Nimbarka. You have even this scholar, this who was Shandas, and who's the other one?
Ramdas.
No, he wrote the book Acting as a Way of Salvation. Haberman became involved with Sampradaya, and with all due respect, part of the reason they went to those Sampradayas is because there were problems with the same movement that got them involved in the first place after Prabhupada's departure, and some misrepresentation of Gaudiya Vaishnavism and so forth, but still captured by the devotional idea and so forth, and then looking for authenticity and so forth, and so it has spawned Western followers and academic interest in those. And Western means, the modern world, basically. So in a way, the prediction of Bhakti Vinod Thakur has already come true. That life is being given, has been infused into these sampradayas by the Chaitanya Sampradaya in the modern day. Now, to the extent to which they recognize that, I think they flourish. To be honest with you, there's now an Acharya in Ramanuja Sampradaya that speaks English, that travels around in America, and speaks, and and goes to some of Prabhupada's temples. Some of it he's allowed, some of it he's not. You know, that goes. But you know, very much respectful, and you know, looking and seeing that, you know, there's really something here. That these people really do love Krishna. You know, they have some people looking for Krishna, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? So you have to rethink, and you know, and it's not that easy for them, because here they're part of a tradition that precedes Chaitanya Vaishnavism, and here it's being represented by Westerners also to a large extent. But you know, they're able to go that distance. There was another, before this, long time back, there was another Acharya in the Ramanuja Sampradaya that accepted Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Bhagwan, according to the Vayu Purana statements, and he so, you know, they don't go with the whole, you know, Siddhanta, you know, and then Mahabharata's globe, and it's not, you know, no, come on, I don't see it quite like that, you know, but and we don't see it quite like them, but we honor their visions. Oh, okay, and that is what you're talking about. The other end of the spectrum. This, and Krishnadas does it when he laid his sword to make the point that Krishna is the source of Narayan, not the other way around, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna. After he makes the law and order, he says, but some people see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the avatar of Shridakshay Vishnu or of Mahavishnu. You can see it that way too. It's possible. He's all things. Because he's one Bhagavan. He can be seen in that way. So he honors that subjective vision. But really, practically, it's a fact. These lineages have gotten some infusion from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. I mean, it's the extent to which Western converts took up Chaitanya Vaishnavism was remarkable to the Hindu world. You know, Prabhupada coming back with his, as was sometimes said, white elephants. You know,
Dancing white elephants.
Wasn't it white elephants?
Yeah, dancing white elephants.
Pink elephants and white elephants. You know, and like in the Indians, they're into this more than we are. You know, what's with that kind of enthusiasm? And so on, and so with other sampradayas as well, and so yeah, I mean, now if they are, and there are some people out there that are against the Gaudiyas and so forth, and they're not gonna get too far with. I think that's kind of over. I mean, there were some Madhva people who were in opposition, you know, Dupi, but the Madhva Acharyas, or I have 8 or 9 of them, 1 or 2 of them, you know, was of a deeper realization and acknowledged the Gaudiyas and so forth, and some of these Ramanuja people. So that's a couple of examples. Yeah, and then, you know, in these Nivarkis, they're all over Vrindavan there, so they're always, you know, doing Katha and quoting the Goswamis. We're going to become the principal commentaries, you know, most of the most relishable commentaries. And Vallabha's, you know, was an associate of Mahaprabhu. So yeah, and I think that, so you can come to Gaudiya Vaishnavism in terms of its particular and specific contribution, gift to the world, or you can come in the fold of Gaudiya Vaishnavism in terms of its broadest outreach as prominent manifestation of the Yuga Dharma, and delivering people from samsara through the chanting of Hare Krishna. But I think that some people come through it for that reason, and in time they understand more, think it out more, and see what the specific gift is and so forth. And because they've had certain association, they can understand it, and maybe you know, they become attached to that gift and they have appropriate corresponding bhajan that develops and so on and so forth. But there are people that come in from the broad outreach and don't go there, and maybe even understand it, but like because of previous lives association, they find themselves, going to Vaidhi Bhakti. There's a couple people, a couple of our rabbis, at least I know a couple, from 1 or 2, it's not very many. And Prabhupada did show, he was very much interested in broad distribution, and in the context of that, where people will find their way. So, if he was in Bombay and there was lots of Sitaram devotees, so he said, okay, put Sitaram devotees there, let them come. They'll come, they'll chant Hare Krishna, they'll also worship Lord Chaitanya and so forth. And they can pursue that course. They would be, in time their pursuit would be enhanced by obviously the right association, ongoing commentaries on the Ramayana and so forth and so on. But it takes a while for devotees to get to that point where they're actually involved in bhajan. Archana is one thing, bhajan is another.
We see that Sri Chaitanya in his group, he would of course encourage everyone to enter into the mood of the Gaudiyas. And he preached in a certain way to try to get them into that mood. And certain people could not go that route. And so in a mission where there's this outreach, how far does the Gaudiya Vaishnava go in presenting his perspective so that he doesn't ever come to the position of offending someone that has a different perspective or a different?
Well, I think the person has to be learned enough to, make presented in a way that the different bases are covered, so you're not going to step on somebody's sentiments, and and you can, if you know the teaching, you can teach the teaching. This is the highest reach, but there are other possibilities, and we see examples, and just like we're talking about tonight, be able to make those points and so forth. And I think that for the most part, you make the point, teach what Gaudiya Vaishnavism is, what its highest reach is, and if someone expresses some interest in Sankhya Rasa or something like that, and you go, oh, yeah, that's a good reason for that, as Prabhupada was obviously he's expressed as his ideal and so forth, and then you can talk about, or I've had a couple of times somebody say, I'm really into Ram, and there's two ways to look at that, okay, well, maybe he's into Ram, maybe she's into Ram Leela, and doesn't understand, why or what the attraction is or whatever, but you don't necessarily try to cut it off. You might ask them and see what the level of their understanding is, and capacity to even do bhajan, what to speak of be successful in that, which you will once you start doing, but it takes time. It's very, very few devotees that have the capacity to even do bhajan. If they can understand it theoretically and have an ideal, and so that's part of the Mishnah, forming the ideal and so forth, but to effectively do bhajan, it requires some advancement. So what I'm saying is somebody expressed some sense, I really like, Ram Leela. So read Ram. Mahaprabhu said, Krishna, 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 hey. Ram Raghava, Ram Raghava, Ram Raghava, Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Krishna, Keshava Krishna, Keshava Pahimani, went south and you chant that mantra. Oh, very nice. And fine, so best to, in some respects, encourage a little interest like that, a little fan, a little spark, and see what happens in due course, and then they'll hear more over time, and so on and so forth. And so it's art of preaching, basically. So, what's the time?
7:58. Not 8 o'clock.
What time we start? 7?
Yeah.
Okay, so. All right, got it. What's up there? Srimad Mahaprabhu Chaitanya Ki Jai.
Jai.
Radhanada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Bhut Premani.
Haribol.
Maharaj.